Hey, this is Joe at the Pour Over.
And this is Zan at the Pour Over. Today is Good Friday. The crucifixion of Jesus marks the darkest day in history, but it's profoundly good news for our broken world. Soon, we will celebrate the eternity-changing hope of resurrection, but today, we mourn that it was because of our sins that he died.
And now for today's news. We're talking about a shooting at Florida State University, new details in the deportation case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, U.S. China Trade Tensions, and other top news for Friday, April 18th. Stay informed while remaining focused on Christ with the Pour Over today.
Here's your quote of the day. God proved his love on the cross. When Christ hung and bled and died, it was God saying to the world, I love you. Billy Graham. Let's get started with some espresso shots.
There was a mass shooting at Florida State University yesterday. Just before noon, the shooter, identified as a 20-year-old FSU student, opened fire near the Student Union building, killing 2 and injuring at least 6 more. Campus police responded immediately, neutralizing and apprehending the shooter, who was then transported to a local hospital with a gunshot wound. It is not known what motivated the shooting. Police say the shooter is not speaking with law enforcement. He reportedly used a former service handgun owned by his mother, who was a sheriff's deputy, and had additional weapons in his car and the Student Union building. Florida State University's main campus in Tallahassee, which has over 40,000 students, was on lockdown for 3 hours and has canceled all classes and local sporting events until Monday. The promise of heaven does not remove the pains of this world, but it does give us hope, strength, and peace during life's most difficult seasons. Join us in praying for hope, strength, and peace for the families and first responders in Tallahassee. Psalm 121, verses 1 through 2 says, I lift my eyes toward the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. A district judge is threatening to hold Trump officials in contempt of court, claiming they showed, quote, willful disregard for a direct judicial order when deporting immigrants to El Salvador last month. It's just part of the multifaceted deportation saga. Wednesday, several documents were released about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man deported from Maryland to a high-security Salvadoran prison. Included was a 2019 arrest record in which he was charged with being in the country illegally and accused of gang affiliation by a confidential informant, and a since-dropped 2021 domestic violence restraining order by his wife. Abrego Garcia's wife said they worked through the situation privately and that it didn't justify ICE, quote, abducting him and deporting him, end quote. Yesterday, Maryland Senator Van Hollen met with Abrego Garcia. Van Hollen, who was denied visitation the day before, said he'd provide a quote-unquote full update upon his return.
When discussing divisive topics like immigration, remember that both your stance and how you take your stance reflect on Christ. Believing you're right is not an excuse to be harsh, impatient, or unkind. From Every Moment Holy, Volume 3. O Lord, let those who claim your name do no harm to it by their abrasiveness and impatience, but rather, speaking your precious truth in love, let them present your story winsomely that it might be well loved and that others might be drawn to your goodness, your beauty.
U.S. China trade tensions are still hot and the Fed's sweating. China told its airlines to stop accepting Boeing jet deliveries and restricted exports of rare earth minerals, essential for everything from missiles and U.S. fighter jets to laptops and iPhones. In response, the White House cranked up tariffs on some Chinese imports to 245% and launched a national security probe into Uncle Sam's foreign mineral dependence. Beijing shrugged off the move as a, quote, meaningless tariff numbers game, end quote, and vowed to see the trade war through to the very end. The Fed is in a pickle. Chair Jerome Powell said the tariffs are, quote, significantly larger than expected, and warned they could cause higher inflation, typically remedied by raising rates, and slower economic growth, typically remedied by lowering rates. For now, the Fed is waiting for greater clarity. Here's a verse to consider when discerning your personal finance habits. When a person's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better a little with righteousness than great income with injustice. Proverbs 16, verses 7 through 8.
Hey, it's Steph from The Pour Over. I'm a toddler mom, which means multitasking is basically a way of life. Audiobooks while folding laundry, answering the 65th why question of the day while hunting for a missing shoe, and earning cash back on things I'm already buying. That's why I love Upside, a free app that gives you real cash back on gas, groceries, and eating out. It's so easy. Just claim an offer, pay as usual with your card, and boom, money back in your account. No scanning receipts and no weird hoops to jump through. Multitask and earn with me. Download the free Upside app and use promo code TPO to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas using promo code TPO.
In other brews, here's a rapid round of updates. An arsonist confessed to firebombing the residence of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro on the first night of Passover. The 38-year-old suspect told police he was, quote, harboring hatred, end quote, for the governor over his pro-Israel stance and would have attacked him with a hammer given the opportunity. Senate Minority Leader Schumer is pushing the DOJ to investigate the attack as an anti-Semitic hate crime.
The Trump admin is looking to make it easier for quote-unquote great undocumented immigrants to obtain legal status. Recently, President Trump floated the idea of incentivizing immigrants with money and plane tickets to quote-unquote self-deport so they can return as legal workers. The proposal, a departure from Trump's typical hardline immigration policy, targets farm and hospitality workers whose employers vouch for their legal return.
Free tax filing is getting slashed. The Trump admin is shutting down the IRS's Direct File tool, a free government-run way to file taxes online. Launched under Biden, the program aimed to make tax filing easy, fast, and economical. But critics, including for-profit tax software companies, call it a waste of taxpayer money, arguing free filing options already exist.
Puerto Ricans had to buy extra ice and candles for their Holy Week celebrations after the island was plunged into a blackout on Wednesday. Things went dark around noon, leaving 1.4 million people without power and more than 300,000 without water in its second island-wide outage since New Year's Eve. Officials expect 90% of lights to be back on today.
AI is activating its right brain? Wednesday, ChatGPT's parent company unveiled new versions of reasoning technology capable of, quote, thinking with images. OpenAI's O3 and O4 mini models don't just see an image, they can integrate visual information directly into their reasoning chain. Translation: they can analyze that diagram you scribbled on a napkin at dinner or answer very specific questions about a blurry phone picture.
That's all we have for today. Thanks so much for listening, TPO fam. If you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app, give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow and hit the notification bell to never miss a new episode. We're grateful for your support. Have a wonderful Easter weekend. See you on Monday.
Running a church in 2025 means reaching people beyond Sunday morning, and Subsplash makes that easier than ever. From mobile apps and websites to giving, media, and live streaming, Subsplash gives you everything you need to connect with your community every day of the week. And it works. Churches on Subsplash see 10% more donations, 50% more media plays, and 3 times more app users. Join over 20,000 churches using Subsplash to grow and engage their communities with gospel-centered content. Check out subsplash.com/TPO to learn more.